Stop being lazy and obsolete, Donna. It's a $400 thermocouple, not a religion. Kyle Mercer said it at 5:42 in Unit 3, with his finger inches from her face and steam fogging around the overhead lines, like the plant itself was trying to stay out of it. 12 hours later, that same unit would sit behind yellow tape. 2 people would be in burn treatment, and the company would begin counting losses in 8 figures. But at 5:42, all Donna Barrett had in front of her was a production manager in a clean jacket, a startup clock already blown, and a control system telling a story she did not trust. She stood beside the local panel for the solvent recovery reactor, helmet lamp clipped but off, gloves tucked under one arm, radio on her shoulder hissing with overnight handoff chatter. Her eyes stayed on the trend screen even while Kyle talked over her. Channel A on the jacket temperature sat smooth and well-behaved. Channel B lagged and wandered. The split held at 37 degrees Celsius and widened when steam demand pulsed. A red diagnostic icon blinked beside the primary input. Junction resistance unstable. Donna did not answer his insult right away. 19 years in rotating equipment and SIS loops had trained that out of her. Anger burned fuel, discipline preserved margins. She zoomed the trend to the previous 2 hours, dragged the cursor over each bump, and watched the same pattern repeat. One channel moved with process reality. The other moved like it was crossing wet cardboard. Kyle leaned in closer. "Did you hear me, or are we doing your little safety theater today?" She looked at the trend. Then she looked at him. "My name is Donna Barrett. I am the senior process control technician on this train," she said, voice level enough that 2 operators near the pump skid turned to listen. "I make $118,000 a year, because when an instrument lies, I catch it before metallurgy and chemistry collect the bill." Kyle gave a short laugh that carried down the bay. "There it is, the speech. We are feeding 3 automotive suppliers off this unit by noon, and you're giving me slogans about feelings." "It's not a feeling." Donna tapped the screen, then pointed to the terminal head mounted on the conduit stand. "It's a channel mismatch, a corrosion diagnostic, and moisture in the head. That is a failed integrity condition." The pre-dawn light coming through the high windows was steel blue and thin. Under the fluorescence, she could see the moisture clearly now. Tiny beads forming beneath the glass in the terminal cap. A wet crescent around the cable gland where conduit sealant had separated. She had seen it before in Gulf humidity, in winter heat cycles, in plants that delayed 10 small maintenance calls to save 1 line item. Moisture wicked down, reached the junction, damped response, and turned live temperature into a delayed guess. Kyle followed her point, squinted once, and shrugged. "Condensation, cosmetic. The probe still reads." "Reads what?" she asked. "Reality or a damp junction averaging yesterday with today?" He threw both hands out. "Reads enough to run." Donna's jaw set. She stepped to the local cabinet, opened the maintenance pocket, and checked the last replacement entry. 11 months, 3 weeks. Recommended interval in this service was 9 months, shorter in wet conditions. Someone had penciled "defer to outage." She closed the pocket slowly, turned, and found Kyle already glaring at the startup checklist clipped to her board. He snatched at the bottom edge. "Sign the heat-up authorization." "I won't." "You're refusing a direct order?" "I'm refusing a bad startup." His voice sharpened. "Use the right words." She did. "I cannot authorize reactor heat-up with an active diagnostic failure and a 37-degree split between redundant channels. A forklift passed behind them, reverse alarm chirping. Then the noise dropped out again and made the silence at their feet louder. One of the board operators, Inez, spoke softly into her radio and cut her mic when Kyle glanced over. People at Unit 3 knew the posture. They had seen managers push. They had seen Donna hold a line with no drama and no apology. They also knew quarter-end week when they smelled it. Extra trucks, extra calls, extra promises made to people who did not stand on the deck when valves stuck. Kyle lowered his voice and moved close enough that only she heard the first sentence. "You are not the moral center of this plant." Donna met his eyes. "No, the procedures are." Then he made sure everyone heard him. "Procedure does not pay penalties, throughput does." She replied at the same volume. "Throughput after an unsafe startup is fantasy accounting." He gave her a look of open contempt, then turned to the two operators and the maintenance lead, gathering by the stairs. "You hear this? Senior tech says we should lose the whole morning over a $400 part." Donna stepped toward the terminal head and unscrewed the cover a quarter turn. A puff of damp, solvent-tinged air escaped. She held the cap so Kyle could see the inside surface filmed with moisture. The terminal strip had a faint green fringe around one screw, where corrosion had started chewing copper. "That is not a theory," she said. "That is failure in progress." Kyle didn't even look for long. "You always do this when we need pace. Every single deadline, same act. You call it caution. I call it fear." She felt the first clean edge of insult land then, not because he had raised his voice, but because he had collapsed craft into character. Lazy, obsolete, fearful. Those words were management shortcuts, like bypass jumpers and handwritten lockout tags. They moved fast and cost later. She replaced the cap and tightened it gently so the threads seated. If the primary probe is waterlogged, the controller hunts low. The steam valve stays open and vessel temperature can overshoot the polymer window before the trip believes it, she said. "This is not caution. This is causality." Kyle snapped. "There you go again with the lecture." She did not blink. "You want plain language? If the sensor underreports, the reactor cooks hotter than the screen says. And the backup? Already disagrees by 37 degrees. Then we use the backup. We verify both legs and loop check the trip before introducing heat. That's procedure 8.14. He barked a laugh that had no humor in it. "You and that binder. You act like those pages came down from a mountain." "They came from incidents." That landed for a beat. The maintenance lead, Sandeep, looked at the floor. Inez looked at Donna, then at Kyle, then put her eyes back on the panel like the safest place in the world was inside her own task list. Kyle recovered first. "I'm done debating this. Turn the key. Start steam ramp." Donna stayed still. "No." "Say it again." "No." "You are being insubordinate." "I am being competent." His face flushed from collar to cheekbone. "Don't confuse stubbornness with competence. Don't confuse title with thermodynamics." That one drew a sharp inhale from somebody behind her. Kyle stepped back, as if giving himself room to strike without touching. His voice came out clipped, rehearsed, managerial. "This site runs on chain of command. This site stays standing because chain of command follows engineered limits," she answered. He pointed at her badge. "Hand that over if you're not doing your job." She unclipped it and held it out halfway, then stopped. My job is instrument integrity before thermal start. Your job is what I assign, not when your assignment violates startup protocol. He smiled then, thin and dangerous. You know what your problem is? You still think this place belongs to people who turn wrenches and read trends. It belongs to people who deliver. Donna heard her own breathing under the plant noise, steady and controlled. She had trained half the operators on the floor, signed off on interlock testing after midnight outages, and sat with young technicians at 2 a.m., showing them how a drifting input could look normal until it crossed the only number that mattered too late. She had eaten vending machine dinners during turnarounds and watched new managers arrive with polished shoes and vocabulary from performance dashboards. Most learned. Some didn't. Kyle took one step closer and gave the line he wanted witnessed. Do your job or get off the unit, she answered just as clearly. I am doing my job. He turned to the panel operator. Log this. Donna Barrett refusing startup order at 5:47. Then back to Donna, louder again. Cowardice documented. Her radio crackled. Dispatch asked Unit 3 for startup status. Nobody spoke for 2 seconds. Then Kyle keyed his own mic and said, Minor delay. Resolving personnel hesitation now. Personnel hesitation. Donna let the phrase sit where it belonged, next to every other euphemism that had ever preceded an incident report. She took her clipboard, flipped to the pre-start verification sheet, and wrote in block letters, Thermocouple channel mismatch, 37 degrees Celsius. Primary diagnostic red moisture, present in terminal head. Startup authorization withheld per 8.14. She signed and time-stamped 5:49. Kyle watched her write and shook his head. You are going to lose your badge over this. She tore the carbon copy, handed one sheet to Inez for the shift log, and kept the original. Better than losing a unit over pride. You think this is pride? I think this is you trying to buy schedule with safety margin. He opened his mouth, shut it, then spoke in a quieter voice that carried worse than shouting. When this starts without you, remember today. Remember who moved and who blocked. Donna slid the paperwork into a clear sleeve and tucked it into her binder. When this starts, without correcting that instrument, remember your signature on the competency review where these limits were non-negotiable. He stared at her for a long moment, then turned away and motioned for a junior operator down the bay to come forward. The young man jogged over, eyes moving from Kyle to Donna to the panel. Donna felt the shape of the next hour forming around them like closing steel. The insult was the first move, never the last. In plants like this, contempt did not stay verbal for long. It translated into orders, overrides, and missing safeguards. She looked once more at the red diagnostic flag blinking on the screen, steady as a metronome, and she knew exactly what she would refuse when he asked again. The junior operator stopped 2 steps short of the panel. Hard hat, still too clean. Gloves clipped to his belt instead of on his hands. His name patch read Evan Ruiz. Donna recognized him from simulator training, bright and careful when there was time to think, less steady when somebody with authority crowded his shoulder. Kyle pointed at the startup key switch and said, You're on manual bias for heat up. Follow my pace. Evan nodded once, not looking at Donna, and that single avoided glance told her he already understood this was not routine. Donna moved to the side console and opened the raw input page that most managers never touched. The polished trend that fed the control room screen smoothed noise into neat curves. On that view, Channel A looked calm enough to pass a quick glance. The raw page showed the ugly truth underneath. A sat on frozen plateaus, then caught up in tiny stair steps. Channel B, consistent with what they had already seen, lagged and wandered instead of tracking cleanly. A healthy thermocouple should move with thermal inertia, not with electrical hesitation or smeared delay. She tapped the screen and called to Inez without raising her voice. Pull 1 second historian for TIC3A and TIC3B. I want the unfiltered packet. Inez answered from the board. Copy. 1 second extract. Her hands moved fast over the keyboard, and the printer in the cabinet spat out warm paper with time-stamped rows. Donna ran a finger down the columns. At 5:49 and 12 seconds, A read 41.2 degrees Celsius, while B read 77.8 degrees Celsius. At 5:49:13, A froze while B crept and wandered. At 5:49:14, A jumped 3.4 degrees with no corresponding steam command. That was not process behavior. That was signal contamination masquerading as stability. By 5:50, the shift had gone quiet, in the way crews did, when everyone was listening without appearing to listen. She crouched at the terminal head again, this time with a flashlight and a small mirror from her kit. The lens caught a fine line of water beaded along the lowest thread, right where capillary action could feed moisture into the ceramic block. She angled the mirror and saw oxidation on the positive leg lug, green and dull, with a darker stain trailing down the insulation sleeve. A thermocouple generated voltage from a temperature gradient measured in millivolts. Millivolts did not forgive wet junctions, loose lugs, or leakage paths to ground. A little moisture changed resistance, bled signal, and introduced lag. Lag during heat-up meant false reassurance. Sandeep hovered near the conduit rack, wrench in hand but waiting for a command that would protect him from blame. Donna held the light on the compromised gland and called him over. See this sealant split? Water tracked down conduit. The head is breathing damp air every night cool down. Sandeep bent close, frowned, and gave a reluctant nod. Yeah, could be ingress. Kyle, 10 feet away, answered for him. Could be, could not be. We are done with hypotheticals. Donna straightened and pulled her handheld calibrator from its case. Then let's remove the hypothetical. She clipped into the marshalling terminals and read loop resistance. Channel A resistance was unstable, climbing and dropping as if someone were flexing a damaged cable. Channel B resistance stayed comparatively steady even while its temperature indication kept the known lag and wander behavior. She repeated the test with Sandeep watching the display, then asked him to tap the conduit gently with the handle of his wrench. Each tap produced a flicker on A that was too large for vibration pickup and too erratic for true temperature change. Intermittent connection plus moisture, she said. That is why the trend looks calm after filtering. Raw signal is not calm. Evan shifted his weight near the key switch. Kyle saw it and snapped. Don't freeze up. We are preheating, not launching a rocket. Donna ignored the line and moved to the local steam control valve positioner. The command sat at 12% with no authorized heat-up. She checked the hand station and found manual override armed. Not active yet, but armed. She spoke to Inez again. Confirm independent high trip status, SIS channel, not BPCS. BPCS was the basic control system that kept process on target. SIS was the safety instrumented system designed to shut things down when target vanished. If BPCS lied, SIS had to remain incorruptible. Inez answered after 3 seconds, voice tighter now. SIS healthy flag is green, but diagnostics show stale heartbeat on the high transmitter update. Last full proof test. 91 days. Donna turned toward Kyle. Proof test interval is 90. We are 1 day over. He lifted a palm. 1 day over is operationally acceptable. Donna replied, 1 day over with a suspect primary measurement is compounding error. She asked for the independent handheld IR gun and caught it when Sandeep tossed it over. She pointed at the reactor shell near the lower jacket quadrant, then upper quadrant, then nozzle neck. The readings varied wider than expected for idle conditions. 82 degrees Celsius. Low side 109 degrees Celsius, upper side. With no steam ramp yet commanded. Residual heat pockets from prior operation could explain some spread, but not with this pattern and not with ambient this cool. She took 3 more readings in the same spots 30 seconds apart. The upper quadrant climbed to 116 degrees Celsius, while channel A on the panel sat in the low 40s. The instrument was not just drifting, it was disconnected from reality. She walked back to the panel and wrote the IR values directly on the margin of her copy log, timestamping each point. Evidence first, argument later. Inez print last shutdown cooling curve for this reactor and overlay with today's residual profile. The printer started again. The old curve showed a predictable decay to near ambient by midnight. Today's profile had a shoulder in the early hours, a subtle stall that suggested either trapped heat or false feedback keeping trim steam open longer than acknowledged. Donna traced the shoulder with her pen and felt the same cold certainty she had learned not to ignore. Kyle folded his arms. You're building a courtroom file while production waits. Donna answered without looking up. I'm building a causality file so nobody can call this a mystery. She pointed to the shoulder. Residual heat didn't bleed off as expected. If channel A underreported overnight, the loop could have floated steam to chase a ghost set point. That preloads the jacket. Startup from a preloaded jacket shortens time to excursion. Evan finally spoke, voice thin. Can't we just run on B and watch it close? Donna turned to him, gentler than she had been with Kyle. Redundancy is not picking the prettier number. Redundancy is validating both legs and the trip path before introducing more energy. Right now, one leg is corrupted, and the trip channel is overdue for proof. If you bias steam with bad feedback, the controller won't save you. Evan swallowed and looked down at his gloves. A compressor kicked on in the adjacent bay, then coasted into a steady drone that vibrated through the grating underfoot. Donna could smell hot oil and faint ketone from the solvent line. Not alarming on its own, but sharper than at the same point most mornings. She checked the vent condenser return temperature on the nearby display. It was trending high by 6 degrees compared with the same shift last week. Higher return temp meant less condensing margin. Less condensing margin meant more vapor load routed toward relief if reactor temperature got away. The system was stacking vulnerabilities in plain sight. She called dispatch on radio, voice formal. Unit 3 instrumentation anomaly report. Request instrumentation engineer callback and authorization to hold startup pending probe replacement and terminal head dryout. Dispatch acknowledged and gave a ticket number. INC-3-054. External contact logged. Kyle cut in immediately on his channel. Manager note, startup continuing under local supervision. Donna heard both transmissions and understood what that meant for later review. Two official narratives now existed, one procedural, one political. She asked Sandeep for a megger, the insulation resistance tester maintenance used when moisture was suspected. Kyle objected. "You are not meggering a live loop." Donna said, "I'm isolating at terminal for 5 seconds. If insulation is compromised, we stop pretending." Sandeep hesitated until Kyle waved an irritated hand that could be read either way. Donna isolated channel A at the terminal block, applied the test, and watched the reading settle far below acceptable insulation resistance for that service. Not catastrophic open circuit, just damp and leaky. The exact failure mode that produced believable but wrong numbers. She had seen this profile twice before in other units, and both times teams had caught it before startup. This time she was watching a manager try to normalize it. She re-landed the wire, tightened lugs to torque with a stubby driver, and repeated the resistance check. The number improved slightly, then decayed again within a minute as moisture redistributed. That transient improvement was dangerous because it invited optimism. Kyle seized on it anyway. "There, better. We move." Donna shook her head. Temporary contact improvement does not restore instrument integrity. Water is still in the head. Corrosion is still active. Diagnostic is still red. Inez called from the board. High transmitter just dropped 1 packet. Flag cleared and returned." Donna answered, "Log the drop with timestamp." Then to Evan, "Do you understand why packet loss matters?" He nodded uncertainly. She continued, still instructional, because fear without comprehension only made compliance easier. The trip compares measured value against a hard threshold. If updates stall at the wrong moment, trip sees old data while real temperature keeps climbing. In slow processes, you get seconds. In solvent recovery, with exotherm risk, seconds are expensive. Kyle checked his watch with theatrical impatience. How many more educational speeches? Donna's eyes stayed on the trend as she replied, "Until the machine stops lying." She switched the display from engineering units to millivolt input and watched A flatten while B drifted in the same delayed, wandering signature it had shown all morning. A healthy channel carried thermal noise, tiny random movement around trend. Channel A was unnaturally smooth, a deadened line wearing the mask of confidence. Dead smooth was never safe smooth. At 5:56, she requested a local bump test on the temperature transmitters using a dry block calibrator. Sandeep rolled over the case card. They could not fully simulate process heat at that location, but they could test response lag and directional fidelity. Channel B followed the induced steps with its familiar laggy wander, yet kept directional sense. Channel A responded late on rise and slower on fall, with hysteresis that widened each cycle and occasional catch-up jumps, unrelated to the block ramp. Hysteresis meant the sensor remembered the wrong state too long. In control loops, that memory translated into overshoot. Donna dictated while Inez logged. Channel A lag exceeds acceptance. Directional asymmetry observed. Moisture ingress confirmed visually. Insulation resistance below threshold. Diagnostic red persistent. Recommend immediate replacement and terminal drying with desiccant purge. She signed beneath it and handed the sheet to Sandeep for maintenance attachment. Physical evidence now existed in 3 places: shift log, maintenance packet, and incident ticket. Kyle stepped closer, voice low and hard. "You've made your point. We need product." Donna finally faced him fully. "This is the point. Product quality depends on thermal history If actual reactor temperature crosses 265, polymer chains degrade. You won't see it at the valve. You'll see it later as adhesion failure at customer line speed. They won't call it a temperature story. They'll call it our resin failing in service. He gave a dismissive shake of the head, but his eyes flicked once toward the printed logs in her hand, and she noticed. That flicker was not agreement. It was recognition that documentation would outlive the shift. He pivoted away and told Evan, "Stand by for manual bias instructions." Donna heard the words and felt the alarm harden from technical concern into operational countdown. She took one last look at the terminal head. A fresh droplet had formed along the inner lip while they argued, clear and round under the flashlight beam. Condensation did not care about hierarchy. Corrosion did not care about quarterly targets. She wiped the droplet with lint-free cloth, held it up to the light, and saw a faint green tint from copper salts. She dropped the cloth into a labeled sample bag from her kit, wrote time and location on the strip, and sealed it. If anyone claimed later that the moisture was superficial, she wanted a record no meeting could edit. The red diagnostic icon blinked again, patient, regular, indifferent. Donna stood at the panel, headset pressing against one ear, palm resting near the alarm silence button she hoped not to use, and listened to the unit breathe through pipes and steel, while a failing sensor kept pretending to be good enough. The red diagnostic icon blinked again, patient, regular, indifferent. And Kyle mistook that steadiness for permission. He stepped to Evan's shoulder, pointed at the key switch, and said, "Manual bias, 5% steam. Then walk it up. We are done with this delay." Donna moved in before Evan's hand reached the switch, not touching him, just placing her clipboard on the panel rail between his glove and the controls. "No startup clearance," she said. Her tone stayed flat, procedural, the same voice she used during drills. "Unit 3 remains in instrument fail condition. Any heat input right now is outside 8.14 and outside SIS readiness." Evan pulled his hand back like the metal had turned hot. Kyle gave her a long stare, jaw flexing once. "You already made your protest." "This is not a protest." Donna tapped the timestamp on her sheet. "This is an active refusal under operating procedure. I am naming mechanism and risk. Channel A is stable reference. Channel B is damped, unstable, and mismatched. High trip heartbeat has already stalled once. If you add steam, the controller integrates false low feedback and chases a temperature that does not exist." She turned to Evan and kept her words simple enough to cut through stress. "That means the valve stays open while actual reactor temperature rises faster than the display. By the time the numbers look bad, the chemistry is already ahead of you." At 5:57, the compressor drone from the adjacent bay dropped out for a purge cycle, and the sudden quiet made every sound from Unit 3 sharper. Condensate pinging in the steam line, relay clicks in the cabinet, a soft hiss at the jacket valve seat. Donna heard the hiss and checked valve position. Still cracked open, still feeding heat into a system she had not authorized. "Close CV 317 to hard shut," she said to Inez over her shoulder. Inez looked to Kyle first, then back to Donna. Kyle answered before she could move. "Leave it. We're transitioning." Donna did not raise her voice. "Any transition starts after loop integrity, not before." Kyle laughed once, short and mean. "You talk like a textbook." I talk like someone who has buried enough near misses in reports to recognize one before it turns into casualty math. Donna lifted the printout and read from the data so nobody could claim she was improvising. 549.12, a 77.8, B41.2, 0549.14, B jump 3.4 with no command change, insulation resistance below threshold after isolation test, persistent moisture ingress. That is not noise. That is corrupted measurement. She placed the sheet beside the key switch and underlined the last line with her pen. Startup authorization withheld. Sandeep shifted closer, wrench resting against his thigh, and asked quietly, "Could we run at reduced ramp? Maybe 1 degree a minute?" Donna shook her head. Ramp rate does not fix false feedback. Slow bad data is still bad data. The loop does not know truth, it knows signal. If the signal lies low, the loop adds heat until limit logic catches up, and limit logic is already overdue on proof interval. She pointed toward the reactor through the grated opening. This vessel is not forgiving once exotherm starts. Resin system has a narrow thermal window. Past 265, chain scission begins. Viscosity drops, vapor rises, relief demand spikes. You cannot handwheel that back by feel. Kyle's expression hardened into the corporate smile he used in audit photos, all teeth and no warmth. There's the fear script again. You think if you keep saying big words, people forget we have deadlines. Donna answered with exact cadence. Deadlines do not alter heat transfer coefficients. Deadlines do not dry water out of a terminal head. Deadlines do not reset proof test clocks. She turned to Inez. Log verbal stop work assertion by control technician at 5:58. Witnessed by operations and maintenance. Inez hesitated, then typed. The keyboard clatter sounded louder than it should have. Dispatch crackled on Donna's radio, responding to ticket INC 3054. Unit 3, Instrumentation Engineering Callback available on line 3. Donna keyed up immediately. Put them through to local handset. She grabbed the wall phone, hit speaker, and heard engineer Leah Crow's voice come in thin but clear over plant noise. Donna, I reviewed your notes and last month's drift trend. If moisture ingress is confirmed and you have that channel split, recommendation is hold startup, replace probe assembly, dry and reseal conduit, then full loop check, both legs and trip input. No heat until verified. Donna thanked her and repeated, for the log. Engineering recommendation is hold and replace. Kyle leaned in and stabbed the speaker button off before Leah could continue. He looked at Donna as if she had staged theater. Engineering doesn't run this shift. I do. Engineering just gave you a defensible path. I said we are moving. Donna inhaled through her nose, slow and controlled, and chose the wording that could survive review boards. For the record, I am refusing to execute or endorse startup commands under current conditions. I will not turn the key, set bias, clear interlocks, or silence temperature-related alarms, except under emergency response protocol. She removed her hand from the panel rail and stepped back half a pace to make the boundary visible. You can overrule me. You cannot convert that overrule into my consent. Evan's throat worked as he swallowed. Kyle, if engineering said hold... Kyle cut him off. Engineering sits in an office. We are on the floor. This is a nuisance failure and we are treating it as one. Donna turned slightly toward Evan. Nuisance alarms are repetitive alerts with verified good instrumentation. This is diagnosed instrument damage. Different category, different rule. She tapped the red icon again. This one is telling you it cannot be trusted. Believe it now or pay for that choice later. At 6 o'clock, the unit clock rolled the hour and Donna felt the shift cross from argument into command enforcement. Kyle reached for her clipboard. She moved it away before his fingers closed on it and passed it to Sandeep instead. Witness copy. Keep it with maintenance packet. Sandeep took it and tucked it under his arm without comment. Kyle watched that transfer and his voice dropped. You think paper shields you. Paper preserves facts. He took one step closer. Facts are that we are behind schedule and you are blocking production. Facts are that you are ordering startup with failed instrumentation. He pointed toward the gate at the end of the bay. Last chance. Turn the key yourself, or hand me your badge, and clear this panel. Donna unclipped her radio mic and set it on the console for a second so her voice would not spike over static. I already answered you. No. She clipped the mic back on and addressed the room, not just him. I am refusing this operation on technical grounds. Damped thermocouple response, channel mismatch, overdue proof interval, observed packet stall, and independent IR variance outside expected idle distribution. Mechanism is false low feedback driving excess heat input. She looked at Evan directly. If you proceed, monitor shell IR every 30 seconds and treat any divergence as real, not display lag. Kyle snapped. Do not coach my operator. He is a person on this deck, not a replaceable line item. The words landed and hung. Then Kyle pulled a folded form from his jacket pocket, already signed at the top, and slapped it on the panel. Temporary duty reassignment effective immediate. Donna read it once. Suspended from control authority pending conduct review. No reference to the instrument condition. No reference to procedure 8.14, only failure to execute managerial direction. Kyle held out his hand. Badge. Power pressure did not need shouting. It needed witnesses. Kyle called 2 operators from the far side of the bay and made them stand within earshot. Let everyone hear this, he said. When you refuse lawful instruction, you lose scope. Donna unclipped her access badge and placed it in his palm. Her hand did not shake. Scope is not obedience. Scope is competence under procedure. Kyle closed his fingers around the badge and gave a thin nod to Evan. You're on panel authority now. Do what she would not. Evan looked stunned. I'm not signed for independent startup on Unit 3. You are now. I'm granting temporary authorization. Donna stepped in before panic could lock him up. Authorization does not erase physics. Ask for written deviation with risk sign-off from PSM and EHS if he wants you to proceed. Kyle barked. No more interference. Donna held up both hands and took 2 steps back to the yellow stripe-marked observer boundary. I'm not touching controls. I am still allowed to speak hazard. She turned to Inez. Please, log that temporary operator assignment was issued without completion of startup competency matrix for this unit. Inez's eyes flicked to Kyle, then down to her keyboard. She typed. Kyle keyed dispatch. Unit 3 update. Senior tech removed for noncompliance. Startup proceeding under management direction. Dispatch acknowledged with a clipped copy. Donna keyed her own channel immediately after. Unit 3 safety note. Refusal maintained due to instrument integrity failure and unresolved trip path concerns. Request EHS, witness to deck. External contact made, outcome pending. Kyle glared at her, but didn't try to snatch the radio this time. He understood now that every transmission was a time-stamped branch in the record. At 6:03, EHS Coordinator Malik answered from another unit. Received. I'm tied up at loading rack, 10 to 15 minutes. Donna replied, Understood, we may not have 10. Kyle leaned toward Evan and spoke in the low, urgent cadence of someone selling speed as confidence. Listen to me, set manual at 5, watch B trend, ignore chatter, and keep us on schedule. This is straightforward. Evan nodded weakly and put on his gloves at last, tugging each finger tight as if proper fit could substitute for certainty. Donna watched him move through the preheat screen. Cursor to mode select. Manual confirm. Steam bias entry box flashing. She could smell wet insulation and warm solvent now, the odor sharpening with each second the valve remained ready. She checked her own watch and began a handwritten countdown on the margin of her notes. 6:04:10. No authorized integrity restoration complete. 6:04:20. Replacement probe not installed. 6:04:30. Terminal head moisture unresolved. She kept writing because writing was the one control Kyle could not revoke. He turned once more, voice pitched to cut, and delivered the humiliation he wanted remembered. See this, everyone? 19 years, and she still can't make a decision under pressure. Donna met his eyes from beyond the stripe. I made the decision at 5:49. You just didn't like it. She lifted the sealed sample bag with the green-tinted moisture cloth and set it beside the printed logs on the witness shelf. Evidence is preserved. Engineering advised hold. Procedure advised hold. I advised hold. Your override is now the only reason this startup continues. Kyle faced forward again, hand on the back of Evan's chair. Enter bias. Evan's finger hovered over the confirm key, and Donna, stripped of badge but not of judgment, kept her voice steady for everyone who still had to stand on that deck. If you do this, treat every display degree as suspect until proven. Check shell, check vent return, check relief chatter, and do not wait for the screen to tell you what Steele already knows. Evan closed his eyes for half a breath, opened them, and looked at Kyle's hand on the chair, then at the blinking confirm box, while Unit 3 hummed around them like a machine waiting to see which law would win. Evan pressed confirm. The steam bias box went from flashing amber to steady white, and CV317 eased from cracked to 5% open with a soft actuator whine that Donna felt through the grating more than heard. Kyle nodded once, satisfied, like the keystroke had settled a philosophical argument instead of starting a thermal process with compromised feedback. On the trend screen, Channel B lifted by half a degree and then paused in its familiar delay. Channel A moved almost not at all. The red diagnostic icon kept blinking. Donna wrote the time on the margin of her sheet. 6:04:52, manual bias engaged under override. She added a second line. No corrective maintenance performed prior to heat input. Bring it to 7, Kyle said. Evan hesitated. We haven't checked jacket outlet yet. Bring it to 7. Evan entered the value. The valve inched open again. Donna stayed behind the observer stripe and called each check like a metronome, partly for Evan, partly for the record, partly because naming reality was the only leverage she had left. Shell IR, lower quadrant. Sandeep raised the gun and read off. 98, upper quadrant. 124, neck. 115. Donna marked all three, then looked at the panel where Channel B was still in the 40s. The numbers were already divorcing. and the separation was widening exactly how she had warned. Steel climbing, display strolling. At 6:06, dispatch came back on radio asking for startup progression. Kyle keyed first. Unit 3 stable. Controlled heat up in progress. Donna keyed immediately after on her channel. Unit 3 safety annotation. Independent IR exceeds displayed channel by greater than 70 degrees at upper shell location. Instrument integrity still unresolved. Dispatch went quiet for a beat too long, then answered both with a neutral copy all. Kyle stared at her without turning his head. You enjoy this? No, she said, I document it. He gave a small derisive laugh and pointed at the trend. Looks stable to me. That is what lag looks like right before it becomes overshoot. By the second minute of bias, the reactor bay had changed in ways only floor people noticed. Condensate knock in the steam line became rhythmic and harder. The solvent smell sharpened to a sweet, acrid edge near the vent header. The jacket return line trembled at a higher frequency than normal idle vibration. None of that made a dramatic alarm by itself. Together, it was a pattern Donna had learned to treat as a warning sentence. She looked at the hazard list in her head and started testing branches. Inez, confirm reflux condenser duty. Inez checked and answered, running high side already. Return temp still 6 up. Confirm relief path clear and traced. Clear? Tracing active. Donna nodded once. Keep eyes on vent stack camera. Kyle jumped in. No one asked for stack camera. Donna did not look at him. I asked for stack camera. Evan swallowed and said quietly, stack feed is up. At 6:08, Channel B finally crossed 60 degrees Celsius and climbed in smooth increments that would have reassured anyone who had not seen the raw packet stalls. Channel A gave a polite slope now too, suspiciously synchronized, as if both had agreed to tell the same comfortable lie. Donna leaned closer to the detailed display and toggled update interval. Channel B was reporting in bursts, then holding flat for 1 to 2 seconds before stepping again. Real thermal rise did not move in staircase blocks at this stage. Bad signal conditioning did. Steam at 9, Kyle ordered. Evan did it. Do not exceed 10 without cross-check, Donna said, voice firm, not loud. Not? Kyle snapped. You don't set limits anymore. The polymer does. Sandeep kept the IR gun moving. Lower 110, upper 143, neck 136. Evan stared at the contrast between those readings and the panel's mid-60s and said, almost to himself, that can't be right. Donna answered him directly. It can, and it is. At 6:10, Malik from EHS called over radio while walking over from loading rack. Unit 3, 2 minutes out. Hold status. Kyle keyed before Donna could lift her mic. Proceeding safely, minor instrumentation dispute. Donna cut in on the safety channel. Proceeding under documented override with unresolved measurement failure and overdue proof test on high path. Request immediate witness on deck. Malik answered, received. Coming to you now. Kyle muttered, you're trying to build a trial during startup. Donna kept her eyes on the trend. No, you did that when you bypassed the stop. The first process alarm hit at 6:11:22. Not temperature, but vent condenser differential pressure high. A short, sharp tone chirped in the panel. Then amber text scrolled. Inez acknowledged and read, DP high by 0.3 bar and climbing. Kyle waved it off. Expected on warm-up. Donna replied, expected, yes. Rate not expected. She turned to Evan. Hold bias, do not add steam. Kyle overruled instantly. Take it to 11. Evan looked from one to the other, then froze on the keypad. 11, Evan. Donna spoke without inflection. If you add heat now, you're betting on a sensor we already proved damped. Don't make that bet. Kyle leaned over and hit the keypad himself. Steam bias jumped to 11%. A deeper hiss rolled through the jacket loop. On the trend, Channel B took another delayed step to 74 degrees Celsius. IR upper shell passed 160 degrees Celsius. Malik came through the bay gate at 6:12, hard hat tilted back, clipboard tucked under one arm, and stopped short when he saw Donna behind observer tape and Kyle on the operator's shoulder. "What exactly is active?" he asked. Kyle answered. "Startup. Controlled." Donna answered in parallel. "Startup under refusal, probe compromised. Cross-check divergence over 80 degrees at shell. High comms packet loss observed preheat." Malik frowned and moved to the board side. "Why is senior controls off authority during thermal start?" Kyle said. "Conduct issue." Donna said, "Procedure issue." Malik looked at both, then at the logs on the shelf, then at the live trend. "I need current against mandatory hold threshold and independent confirmation." Inez spoke fast. "Displayed 78 on B, 75 on A, IR upper 168 and rising." Malik's posture changed. "That spread is not acceptable. Freeze heat input." Kyle shot back. "EHS advises. Operations decides." Malik answered. "EHS can issue stop work on imminent hazard." For 1 second, Donna thought the unit might step back from the edge. Then Kyle said the quiet line that showed he had already chosen the outcome. "Write your memo later. Right now we finish the ramp." He told Evan, 12%. Evan's glove hovered above the keys, trembling now. At 6:13:40, a faint metallic chatter came from the relief line. 3 quick knocks like someone tapping a wrench on a handrail. Donna heard it and felt her stomach tighten. Relief valves did not chatter in healthy warm-up at these displayed temperatures. They chattered when local hotspots flashed vapor where instrumentation still reported comfort. "Did you hear that?" she asked. Sandeep nodded, face gone pale. "Relief seat flutter." Kyle said, "Steam hammer, nothing else." Donna snapped, sharper than before. "No. Steam hammer is broad, low, and in the jacket run." That was relief chatter from vapor bursts. She keyed radio to dispatch, clipped and formal. "Unit 3 urgent safety escalation. Audible relief flutter inconsistent with displayed reactor temperature. Request immediate operations. Superintendent and medical standby." Dispatch came back, voice tight. "Superintendent en route. Medical notified. External contact outcome logged." By 6:15, the atmosphere on deck had narrowed to task fragments and breathing. Evan called out entries with a strained voice. Inez repeated values. Sandeep kept shooting IR every 30 seconds. Malik stood with pen frozen over his form, no longer pretending this was routine documentation. Kyle watched the trend, like it could vindicate him if he stared hard enough. Displayed B, 92 degrees Celsius. Displayed A, 89 degrees Celsius. IR upper shell, 187 degrees Celsius. Vent condenser DP, continuing up. Reactor pressure, climbing faster than temperature model predicted. Donna kept mapping the causality chain in real time. False low drove excess steam. Excess steam raised wall temperature. Hot wall accelerated localized reaction rates in resin film zones. Reaction heat added to steam heat. Vapor generation rose non-linearly. Condenser margin eroded. Relief path approached duty early. The system was moving from controllable heat-up into self-accelerating imbalance, while the main display still wore a calm face. "Hold where you are," Donna said to Evan. "Do not touch bias." Kyle answered, 14. Malik stepped in. "I'm issuing stop work." Kyle didn't even look at him. "Noted." He entered 14 himself. Donna heard another relief knock, longer this time, followed by a low groan from steel expanding unevenly around the jacket. The sound crawled along the vessel wall and into the support legs. She had heard that groan once before during an uncontrolled batch years ago, and it had ended in a 6-month rebuild. At 6:16:22, the first high-temperature alarm finally appeared on the panel for Channel B, crossing 100 degrees Celsius with amber flashing that looked almost absurd against what they were measuring outside. Evan blurted, "Only 100? Donna pointed to IR. "Upper shell now 206. Malik turned to Kyle and said, each word deliberate, "Terminate heat input now." Kyle's reply was immediate. "We're inside limits." Donna could hear her pulse in her ears now, but her voice stayed disciplined. "You are inside displayed limits, not actual thermal state." Sandeep lowered the IR gun and said, "Nozzle neck 210. The dread stopped being abstract at that moment. It became geometry and timing. They were no longer arguing about procedure compliance. They were waiting to see which component would fail first. At 6:17:05, pressure rose in a fast stair-step instead of a smooth incline. Inez read it aloud before she could stop herself. "Pressure up 0.7 in 10 seconds. Donna said, "That's vapor surging." Kyle reached for the alarm silence button as new tones started stacking. Donna moved her body between his hand and the panel edge without crossing the control boundary. "Do not silence. We need audible layers." He hissed, "Move!" She did not. "You wanted witnesses. Keep the sound." Then the timeline compressed. At 6:17:42, relief valve RV3A snapped open with a hard metallic crack that punched through the bay noise. A white plume shot up the vent riser outside the grating, thick and fast, and the whole unit shuddered as flow redirected. 3 seconds later came the steam roar, sustained and violent, like a freight train passing through a pipe rack. Condensate rained from overhead in hot needles that hissed when they struck painted steel. "Emergency shut!" Donna shouted. "I'm on it!" Inez slammed the ESD sequence from the board. The screen lagged, command spinning. At 6:17:50, Channel B finally leaped from 108 to 131 in one update. At 6:17:53, it jumped again to 154. The lie was collapsing under the speed of reality. Evan stumbled backward from the panel, both hands up. "It's running away." "Close steam block manually," Donna yelled to Sandeep. He bolted toward the hand wheel at the local block valve, Malik right behind him. The roar deepened. Another groan rolled through the vessel, louder. Then a hammering pulse hit the relief line in rapid succession. At 6:18:04, a flash ignited at the vent stack tip outside, white, orange, and brief, but bright enough to throw hard shadows across the bay. It was not a full fireball, not a movie explosion. It was a violent ignition of vapor at the flare point that turned the plume incandescent for an instant and sent superheated condensate spraying back downwind. "Down! Face shields!" Donna shouted. She grabbed Evan by the shoulder and hauled him behind the panel side wall as hot droplets rattled the grating and handrails like thrown gravel. On the mezzanine, 2 technicians who had been moving toward the stairwell cried out almost in unison and dropped to their knees, clutching arms and necks where condensate had struck exposed skin at collar gaps. "Medical to Unit 3 now," Malik yelled into his radio, already moving toward them. At 6:18:12, transfer pump P3C, still trying to move thickening, degrading resin, gave a grinding shriek and seized. The motor breaker tripped with a blunt thunk. Flow to downstream filters collapsed. Back pressure fluttered, then spiked. Foamed resin surged into the filter train, and differential alarms cascaded in red across Inez's screen. "Filters contaminating," Inez called. "Downstream quality path compromised." Donna crawled to a line of sight on the panel and saw channel B at 248 degrees Celsius, while IR upper shell from the last shot before Sandeep dropped the gun had been 271 degrees Celsius. There it was, the number she had predicted crossing in the wrong order. Actual thermal state beyond degradation. Display still trying to catch up. "Temperature indication is lying," Evan shouted, voice breaking. No one argued now. At 6:18:20, ESD finally completed and Steam Command slammed shut on the screen. But field closure lagged because of pressure differential and actuator fight. Sandeep and Malik were both on the manual wheel, straining with gloved hands, turning against resistance until the valve seeded with a jolt that traveled up their arms. The relief roar began to taper, then surged once more, then tapered again. Alarm tones kept layering. High temperature, high pressure, vent DP, pump trip, filter contamination, solvent vapor high near the deck monitor. Strobes flashed red through mist and steam, turning the bay into stuttering frames of motion. Donna moved to the mezzanine technicians with the first aid kit from the wall station. Their burns were patchy and painful, but not life-ending. Forearms blistering, neck reddened. One cheek with a wet shine where hot condensate had kissed and run. She kept her words crisp. "You're with me, eyes open, slow breaths. Don't peel anything." Malik's medical team arrived seconds later with burn dressings and stretchers, taking over with practiced speed. At 6:19, the roar had dropped to a harsh hiss. The vent plume thinned from white to ragged gray. Somewhere below, a drain hissed solvent water mix into a containment sump. The acrid odor settled in the throat and sinuses, sharp enough to taste. Inez sat rigid at the board, reading shutdown confirmations through clenched teeth. Steam isolated, reactor feed isolated, agitator coast down complete, transfer train blocked, fire watch active. Kyle stood near the panel, jacket speckled with condensate, face drained of color. He opened his mouth once, closed it, then said, "Why did the trip not catch earlier?" Donna looked at him with a calm that frightened Evan more than shouting would have. "Because you drove heat on compromised measurement and an overdue proof path, then overrode every hold point that could have limited consequence." He stared at the frozen 248 degrees Celsius on the display as if the number had betrayed him personally. Outside, the stack still steamed. On the deck, medics were strapping the 2 injured technicians for transport. The unit had not collapsed. It had done something worse for a production plant. It had stayed standing while proving in exact sequence that every warning had been mechanically correct. Donna did not answer him again. She turned from Kyle and moved to the medics. Because the only moral order that mattered in the first minutes after a thermal event was stabilize. People, stabilize energy, stabilize evidence. One medic was flushing a technician's forearm with tempered water from the emergency kit line, while another cut a sleeve away from fabric that had trapped heat. The injured workers were conscious, breathing hard, eyes wide from pain and shock. Donna knelt long enough to confirm names, exposure points, and time of contact for the treatment log, then stood and called across the bay. No one touches that terminal head, no one clears alarms, and no one powers down historian capture. Her voice carried through the hiss and strobe pulse. The unit still smelled of wet solvent and hot metal, an acrid sweetness with a burnt edge that clung to the back of the throat. By 6:21, the operations superintendent, Mark Ellison, came through the gate at a jog with a tablet in one hand and a radio in the other. He took one look at the medics, one look at the still steaming vent line, and switched into incident command cadence. Status in 10 seconds. Inez answered from the board first. ESD complete, steam command closed and hand wheel seated, feed isolated, transfer train blocked, P3C seized, filter DP high latched, vapor monitor alarm cleared to caution. Malik followed with EHS status. 2 burn injuries, 2nd degree pattern on exposed skin, transport active, no missing personnel, exclusion perimeter in place. Donna gave the instrumentation line last. Primary temperature path failed integrity before startup. Override proceeded. Displayed values lagged actual thermal state by over 20 degrees at event peak, possibly more local. Mark nodded once, then pointed to Kyle. You are out of command. Step to the rail and stay there. Kyle started to speak. Mark cut him off with a flat hand. Not now. The stretchers moved at 6:24. Wheels rattled over graded seams, medics calling step clear at each landing. Donna watched until both injured technicians passed the gate and ambulance doors closed. She exhaled once, long and controlled, then went straight to the witness shelf where she had staged her packet. The sealed moisture cloth bag was still there. The 1-second historian printouts were damp at the corners from condensate, but legible. Her refusal sheet, signed at 5:49, sat beneath the maintenance resistance test sheet and the dry block bump results. She stacked all of it in chronological order and handed it to Mark. Chain of custody starts now. These are originals. I have no edits. He handed the packet to the incident scribe and said, Scan immediately. Seal hard copies in evidence envelope. Duplicate to legal and process safety. External contact. Closed with action. At 6:27, Donna and Inez began the cold walk down with Sandeep and Malik behind them. Each person assigned a lane, so nothing was missed and nothing was improvised. They photographed the terminal head before anyone opened it again. Beading on the inner lip. Green corrosion at the lug. Conduit gland split. They photographed CV317 position feedback, hand wheel stop position, and actuator stem travel. They photographed the seized transfer pump coupling, the breaker state, and the froth line inside the filter sight glass, where degraded resin had foamed and then collapsed into a sticky amber-gray mass. Mark narrated each frame for the record with timestamp and tag number. Photo 41, TIC3A head, moisture visible. Photo 42, corrosion at positive leg termination. Photo 43, manual steam block seated post-event. Physics had already delivered the verdict. Now administration had to preserve it in admissible detail. The first accounting pass started in the temporary command room at 6:41, a converted training office with whiteboards and a wall clock that seemed louder than usual. Donna sat at the end of the table, still wearing her face shield pushed up over her hard hat. Kyle stood near the door under supervision, silent, jacket changed, but cuffs still watermarked. Mark wrote 4 columns on the board: people, plant, product, procedure. Under people, 2 injuries, burn treatment, no fatalities. Under plant, Unit 3 shutdown, pump P3C seized, filter train contaminated, vent stack inspection required, relief valve bench test required, thermal stress inspection on reactor shell and jacket welds. Under product, in-vessel batch suspect, downstream transfer suspect, all connected totes on hold pending lab. Under procedure, startup authorization withheld, override executed, SIS proof interval exceeded by 1 day, engineering hold recommendation interrupted. Each entry had an owner and a clock. By 7:05, maintenance gave the first hard numbers. P3C would need full teardown and likely rotor replacement. Estimated $180,000 and 5 days if parts were local, 9 if not. Filter bank replacement with hazardous waste disposal, $320,000. Relief valve pull, certification, reinstall, $48,000 plus outage labor. Vent stack tip repair after flash damage, preliminary $95,000. Reactor shell and jacket NDE, meaning non-destructive examination, ultrasonic and dye penetrant across heat-affected zones, $210,000 and mandatory cool-down window before access. Instrumentation replacement package for both thermocouples, conduit reseal, marshalling checks, and full loop validation, under $12,000 total, including labor. Nobody said the comparison out loud yet. Nobody needed to. At 7:18, quality control called in from the lab trailer. First grab sample from the reactor heel showed viscosity collapse outside control band and color shift consistent with thermal degradation. Donna asked for chain length proxy by GPC. Lab answered that fast screening already indicated polymer breakdown beyond salvage. Mark wrote, batch condemned under product, and circled it. Estimated mass in vessel and connected line volume, 62 tons unsellable. Finance converted that to immediate material loss at contract value, $1.9 million before disposal. He added a second number for cleanup and decontamination handling, $410,000 minimum. The board filled quickly, and the mood in the room changed from adrenaline to arithmetic. 3 days of production were lost the moment Unit 3 went dark. By 7:40, planning revised it to a minimum of 12 because of inspection queue, parts lead times, and regulator release requirements. Unit 3 fed coating resin to 3 automotive suppliers on just-in-time schedules. 12 days meant missed deliveries on 9 contracted shipment windows. Commercial called from headquarters and asked if Unit 1 or Unit 2 could cover. Process engineering answered no. Solvent balance and catalyst profile were different, and conversion would take longer than the outage itself. Mark added customer force majeure review to the board and assigned legal counsel to every call. Delayed consequence had begun without another blast, exactly how reputational damage usually arrived, quietly, on schedule sheets. At 8:10, the insurance notification call went to the carrier's industrial loss desk, with legal on speaker. Donna sat in as technical witness. The adjuster asked standard opening questions in a calm voice. Ignition source suspected, injuries, estimated property damage, and whether any safety system had been bypassed or overridden, contrary to written procedure. Mark answered the first 3 directly and paused at the 4th. Donna placed her refusal sheet and engineering callback note in front of him. He read from the timeline. Yes. Startup proceeded under managerial override after documented instrument integrity failure and explicit hold recommendation. The adjuster did not react in tone, but changed phrasing immediately. Understood. We are issuing a reservation of rights notice pending policy condition review. In plain language, that meant coverage was no longer assumed. Legal wrote the phrase in red. By 8:37, the regulator notification packet was assembled. Incident time, injury count, process description, immediate controls, and preliminary causal factors. Donna added a technical appendix at Mark's request, concise and mechanical. Moisture ingress at thermocouple terminal head, channel mismatch, unstable resistance, lag/hysteresis under bump test, stale SIS heartbeat event. Startup initiated regardless. Displayed temperature underreported actual thermal state during heat up, exotherm and vapor load, exceeded controlled envelope. She avoided adjectives and blame verbs. She wrote the way investigators needed facts written in chains that could be tested. Malik reviewed and signed EHS concurrence. Packet transmitted at 0852 with receipt confirmation logged. External contact, outcome documented. The unit itself was locked by 9:05. Yellow tape went up at every access stair with red placards. Incident hold, authorized entry only. Lock boxes were mounted on the control cabinet. Donna placed her own lock on the instrumentation cabinet after replacing her badge with temporary incident credentials issued by security. Mark asked her to walk him through exactly what had happened between 5:49 and 6:18 one more time, while the memory was clean. She did, minute by minute, including every order, every refusal, every cross-check, every alarm tone sequence. He stopped her twice for clarification, once on the relief chatter timing and once on the moment Kyle entered steam increases directly. Both were corroborated by historian event logs and keypad audit trail. Loaded setup paid off in data. At 9:32, HR and legal interviewed Kyle in a separate office. Donna was not present, but the outcomes arrived through formal channels before noon. He was removed from duty pending investigation, access suspended. Company devices seized for record preservation. The action was administrative, not dramatic, yet everyone in operations understood its weight. Hierarchy had tried to weaponize itself against procedure. Now hierarchy had pivoted to protect the company from the same decision. Reality had no interest in office politics, but legal liability did. Donna finally sat down at 10:04 with a paper cup of water she forgot to drink. Her hands had begun to ache from gripping radios, clipboards, handrails. Inez dropped into the chair beside her, face drawn and voice hoarse. I kept thinking maybe the display would catch up in time. Donna looked at the floor for a second, then answered. It did catch up. That was the problem. It caught up after damage thresholds. Inez nodded and rubbed her eyes. When Evan yelled it was lying, that hit me. Donna gave a short, tired nod. Instruments fail with confidence. That's why integrity checks exist before heat. By 10:30, finance had a preliminary loss stack on Mark's board. Direct equipment and cleanup, $1.3 million. Condemned in-process material and contaminated downstream product, $2.4 million. Outage labor, contractor mobilization, expedited parts, and restart validation, $3.1 million. Contract penalties and emergency customer mitigation estimates, $4.8 million and rising. Total early exposure, $11.6 million, excluding insurance uncertainty. At the bottom of the board, Someone wrote in black marker, then underlined once, "Deferred thermocouple replacement, $400 part, less than $12,000 full corrective scope." Nobody erased it. Lunch hour passed, without anyone leaving the incident room for long. By 12:15, customer quality teams had requested retained samples and full thermal trace data for the prior week. That request widened the blast radius beyond Unit 3's walls. QA opened archival lots, and logistics placed 3 outbound loads on administrative hold before departure. Donna felt the second wave of consequence arrive right on schedule. Not sirens, not steam, just emails and holds and conference calls that converted a local override into a system-wide trust problem. At 13:02, the medical update came in. Both injured technicians were stable, admitted for burn treatment, expected recovery with no life-threatening complications. The room exhaled as one. Mark wrote stable beside both names in the people column and capped his marker. It was the first entry all day that looked like relief. Donna let herself feel it for 3 seconds, then returned to the technical action list for restart prerequisites. Replace both thermocouples, not one. Replace compromised conduit section. Install drip loop correction, dry and purge terminal head, full loop check with signed witness from controls, and EHS. Proof test SIS high channel before any thermal authorization. Add independent IR verification hold point to startup checklist. She insisted each item carry a signature line, not initials. At 13:40, Mark asked for final verbal from each function lead before he briefed corporate. Donna spoke last. Causal chain is complete and evidenced. We had diagnosed measurement failure, documented refusal, external engineering hold recommendation, and an explicit managerial override that increased heat input against divergent independent readings. The excursion was preventable. The injuries were preventable. The loss stack is a consequence, not a surprise. Mark held her gaze and nodded once. That is the record. When the room emptied for the next call cycle, Donna stayed behind, long enough to place the sealed moisture cloth sample into the evidence locker herself and sign the transfer line. Physical evidence, stored and acknowledged. She closed the locker door, heard the latch catch, and looked through the wired glass toward Unit 3, still taped and quiet under afternoon light. Kyle had called it good enough. The numbers on the board, the tape on the stairs, and the treatment notes at the hospital had already answered what good enough had cost. At 14:06, Donna was still outside the incident room when Mark's radio clicked, and he motioned her back in with 2 fingers. "Don't go far," he said. "Corporate wants live technical in 10, and legal wants your chain of custody log in the frame." She turned around without comment, set her notebook on the table, and watched the video wall wake to 4 boxes. Headquarters counsel, insurance counsel, the plant vice president, and Leah Crow from instrumentation engineering, now with her call notes open. Kyle was not in the room. His chair sat empty near the wall, pushed in too neatly by someone from HR. Mark opened with timestamps, then handed Donna the lane. She did not editorialize. She walked them through 0549 refusal, 0556 resistance checks, 0557 engineering hold recommendation, 0604 manual bias initiation under override, 0617 relief chatter, 0618 vent flash and injury window. When she finished, headquarters counsel asked the question everyone had been orbiting since morning. Can you tie the damaged sensor directly to control error, not just generally? Donna slid the lab intake form for the removed thermocouple toward the camera and answered, yes, we have observed moisture ingress, corrosion products at the terminal, unstable resistance, directional lag under controlled bump test, and packet staleness on associated safety path. Those are direct mechanisms for underreporting during heat up. Underreporting drove excess heat input relative to true vessel state. The causal chain is not speculative. Leah leaned toward her own camera. I can corroborate. My 6 o'clock recommendation to hold startup was logged by phone system and ticket INC-3-054, and it matched our written standard for dual channel mismatch plus active diagnostic fault. She paused, then added with deliberate emphasis, the recommendation was interrupted, not completed. That line mattered because it closed the loop on the call Kyle had cut short. External contact resolved, with record. At 15:12, security entered with a sealed anti-static evidence case from the instrument bench. The failed probe assembly had been removed under witness and delivered for immediate teardown. Donna, Mark, and Malik followed the case to the metrology lab, where the bench lights were white and hard and every tool had a silhouette on the foam. The tech on duty, Wren Park, read the seal number aloud before cutting it. Inside the terminal head, the ceramic block was damp along the lower channel, and the positive leg insulation had micro-cracking near the lug. Wren swabbed the residue, ran a quick ion test, and called out, copper salts present, chloride trace, hydrocarbon trace. He held up the strip so all three could see the color shift. That's not cosmetic condensation. That is conductive contamination. Donna watched Wren mount the probe in a calibration bath and compare its response against a certified reference. On rising temperature, the probe lagged by as much as 92 seconds at mid-range, and then jumped in bursts. On falling temperature, it held high before dropping late. Wren printed the curve and circled the hysteresis loop. This is why your display looked calm while steel was climbing, he said. He opened a second envelope and held up Donna's sealed cloth sample from the morning, now tested. Same ionic profile, same hydrocarbon trace. Physical evidence resolved. Collected, stored, analyzed, cross-matched. At 16:03, HR called Donna to Conference B for witness statements. Evan was already there, cap in both hands, staring at the tabletop. Sandeep sat beside him with his maintenance packet clipped and squared at the edges. The HR partner, legal counsel, and Malik took turns asking short questions. And this time, nobody interrupted engineering language with schedule language. Evan's voice shook at first, then steadied. I knew I wasn't signed for independent startup on Unit 3. I said that out loud. Kyle said I was authorized now. He entered increases himself when I froze. He looked at Donna once, then back down. When she told me redundancy means validating both legs, she was right. I didn't push back hard enough. Sandeep followed with what his earlier silence had concealed. At 5:20, before shift handoff, I told Kyle the conduit seal had separated and put replace at first stop on the maintenance whiteboard. He rubbed it out and said we were not stopping for nuisance wetness. I didn't escalate above him. That is on me. It was the payoff to the floorward look he had given hours earlier, and he did not dodge it now. He handed over a phone photo of the erased whiteboard taken at 5:23. Legal tagged it and added it to the file. Loaded reactions resolved. By 1711, the first callback from the insurer arrived in writing and on speakerphone. The carrier held to a reservation of rights position and issued conditional language flagging potential exclusion on the primary property and business interruption sections because of documented override against safety procedure and ignored engineering hold. They confirmed worker medical handling would continue under a different section, while coverage analysis remained open pending appeal documentation. Mark let the silence sit for a full 5 seconds after the adjuster finished. Then he said, "Understood, send full basis letter before 1900. He clicked off and wrote one line on the board. Reservation of rights. Override documented. Delayed systemic consequence. Now formally signaled. At 1802, regulators called back on the morning packet and required an on-site opening conference at 7:30 the next day. They asked for 3 things preserved without alteration: historian raw data, keypad audit logs, and all pre-start written refusals. Donna confirmed each item existed in duplicate and named their storage locations. No destructive testing on remaining SIS components until your witness is present, the investigator said. Agreed, Mark answered. External contact resolved with concrete action. The next morning, just after 7:30, the conference room smelled like burnt coffee and printer toner. 2 investigators sat across from operations and legal, while Donna projected the 1-second trend and overlaid the IR readings Sandeep had called in real time. The divergence was visual and brutal. Displayed rise smooth and delayed, shell measurements steep and ahead. One investigator tapped the stale heartbeat event and asked, "Was this treated as a critical indicator?" Donna answered, "It was logged, and it should have triggered hold in this context." He nodded once and wrote for a long time. By 9:05, they had issued an initial finding: procedural violation substantiated, instrument integrity failure substantiated, managerial override causally linked to incident severity. Formal penalties would follow. 4 days after the event, at 10:14, the consequence Donna had warned about in the bay arrived through a customer quality bridge call. One supplier had halted brake line coating after adhesion failures in incoming resin lots. Another had quarantined drums pending retest. The third asked whether any affected tons had shipped during the excursion window. QA answered yes. 186 tons had left before full hold. Legal initiated recall notices while Donna and Leah provided the thermal history brief line by line. At 11:32, the insurer's formal determination landed. Primary property and business interruption claim denied, with medical-only coverage continuing under separate terms, and appeal rights preserved. No sirens, no flames, just production lines stopped just across states because one startup decision had poisoned trust. By 12:26, recall letters were out, and by 1400, 2 contract renewals were suspended pending corrective action audit. Distinctive detail resolved. Thermal degradation translated into real adhesion failure, exactly as Donna had stated when Kyle called it fear. At 15:40 that same day, HR held the disciplinary meeting in a glass-walled room off administration. Donna was not a decision maker, but she was asked to attend for factual clarification. Kyle entered with counsel, sat, and tried once to frame the morning as an ambiguous judgment call. Legal placed the 0549 refusal, the interrupted engineering recommendation, the keypad logs showing his direct entries, and the metrology hysteresis report in front of him in a single stack. Mark added the erased whiteboard photo and the insurer's denial letter. This was not ambiguity, he said. This was override against explicit warnings. HR delivered termination for willful safety violation and policy breach, effective immediately. Security collected his badge at the door. Moral inversion was complete. The man who used chain of command as a weapon left without command at all. 1 week later, Unit 3 was still offline for certified repairs, but the plant floor had changed in a measurable way. At 6 o'clock in the training room, every shift lead stood for a mandatory restart governance briefing, led by Donna, now formally reinstated with back pay, and appointed instrument integrity lead for all units. She did not speak like a victor. Speak like us. She spoke like a technician drawing lines in steel. New rule set is simple, she said, projecting the revised checklist. Any active diagnostic fault on temperature critical path is automatic hold. Any channel mismatch beyond tolerance is mandatory startup freeze. Any overdue SIS proof interval is automatic hold. Holds can be lifted only by documented correction, witnessed loop check, and dual sign-off from operations and EHS. Dispatch ticket workflow was revised, so safety annotations and production annotations appeared together. Impossible to split into parallel narratives. Every external contact that had once diverged now had a locked reconciliation step. Thread resolved. At 6:42 after the session, Evan waited until most people had filed out. "Donna," he said, voice low, "I should have refused when you did." She met his eyes and gave him the answer he would need to carry without breaking. "You refuse next time. That is how this becomes useful." He nodded, shoulders dropping a fraction, then headed to simulator retraining, already scheduled in his file. Donna remained in the empty room for a minute, listening to the muffled thrum of a plant, waking into another shift. Through the high window, she could see Unit 3 behind tape and scaffold, open panels and tagged valves catching the early light. The reactor had not changed its nature. Steam still transferred heat. Sensors still converted physics into millivolts. Resin still respected its thermal window and failed outside it. Authority titles still sat on badges. None of those facts were negotiable. What had changed was whether people would pretend they were. She closed the incident binder, signed the final corrective action page, and sent it to legal, regulators, insurers, and customers in one distribution, complete and unsoftened. Kyle had called a damaged sensor good enough. The record now showed, in numbers and names and signatures, that good enough had never been good, and physics had collected every dollar anyway.